Hey everyone, back to you into today's first video. We're going to have a look at some analogues for the summer that my good friend Stuart Markham has sent through to me. Later on, we'll be having a look at El Nino, a very in-depth look at what's going on in the Pacific Ocean. El Nino will factor in this analogue update as well, but we'll be looking very specifically at what's going on in the Pacific in the second video that's coming up at Gazov's later on today. And we'll also have a poll coming up on the blog this evening, so a lot going on at the website. Do keep checking back for more information. The poll is going to be looking at what you're asking, what you think is going to happen for the summer. So I'm throwing the website over to you guys later on this evening, and I'll be taking some soundings on what you think is likely to be happening this summer. So all very interesting, lots of updates going on. But the first update is going to be looking at the analogues of the summer that Stuart sent through to me. We'll get on with that in a moment. But before I get on with it, just want to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all of the pages at Gazov's.com. Have a browse through widgets, any articles that you're interested in, please click through. You have to go up and read the article. Thanks so much for doing that. There's also video ads on most of the pages. They open out within the content, and when you watch them, they'll close back up again. It's all paying for the website. Thanks for getting involved, and thanks for doing that. So let's get on with Stuart's analogues, and we're going to start off with the current situation in the Pacific Ocean, because we've got a developing El Nino. Don't think I'm giving too much away, excuse me, by saying that we have a El Nino developing. As I said, we'll be looking in much more in depth about what is going on in Pacific and what the forecast models are showing for the rest of the year in terms of the El Nino. But this is the current situation from NOAA for the equatorial Pacific. And of course, we've got the warm water here from Peru over towards Indonesia. When you get this block of warm water rising up through the equatorial Pacific, that tells you that El Nino is developing. So we are on our way to an El Nino, and this is going to be an El Nino summer. So what does that mean in terms of our summer fate? Well, what in terms of our summer fate? Well, what Stuart has done, he's gone back and looked at every El Nino summer right way back to 1950s, and then he's created an analog-based chart based on all of those El Nino summers, and this is it. So this takes into account the summers of 1953, 1957, 1983, 1965, 1969, I think that's 1963 actually, just there, 1968, 1972, 1982, 1987, 1991, 1997, 2002, and 2009. And when you put all of those summers together, this is the 500 millibar Hyde's anomaly that you come up with. And look at this, it is a very, very dodgy pattern indeed, with a deep trough of low pressure indicated by those purple colours stuck right on top of the country, and a ridge a long, long way away up to the northeast. We're on the cold side of the jet. With that, it's a dreadful pattern. Really, it indicates a pretty cool, miserable, wet summer. Is the overall signal of a developing El Nino summer. I'm a little bit surprised about that. I thought El Nino, I didn't think it was as stark as that. I thought sometimes El Nino gave you a poor summer, certainly, but I thought sometimes it did give you a very good summer. But no, actually, El Nino is a signal taken just on its own and looking at nothing else. El Nino is a signal for a pretty poor summer. So you read a lot in the newspapers about how El Nino sort of favours hot summers. It's not the case, certainly in terms of Stuart's analogues anyway, but just on its own, El Nino is a signal for a cool and a mixed summer. Now, we know that we've also got very weak solar activity going on at the moment. This chart, I'm sure you're familiar with it, this is from NASA, and it shows the sunspot cycle for solar cycle 24, which is one we're currently in, versus the last sunspot cycle, solar cycle 23. And you can clearly see that the solar activity this cycle is much weaker compared to the solar activity in solar cycle 23. So what Stuart has done with that is taken the weak solar activity that we have through solar cycle 24 and he's put it together with the developing El Nino signal. And again, this is the 500 millibar height anomaly for the summer that you come up with when you do that, when you add weak solar activity years to developing El Nino years, you come up with this, and it's a dreadful signal again with low pressure right in over the top of the country. Any ridging is a long way away up to the northeast, and we're on the cold side of the jet stream with that under a trough of low pressure. It's a bad signal for the summer. But it's not quite as straightforward as this, what we've started off with for these updates. And the reason is that El Nino is not a uniform, phenomena. So it develops in different ways, and sometimes you'll get it, for instance, you'll get it strong early on in the cycle and then it'll weaken as the cycle progresses. That's very rare, but it does happen. Sometimes you'll get it pretty weak to start off with, and then it'll get stronger as the cycle progresses. That's a more common phenomena. Sometimes it will be sort of central and western based in the Pacific Ocean, so it will be in sort of this area here, and it'll be cooler just here. That's like a Modoki or Mediki El Nino. And then sometimes, this is the more common form of El Nino, you'll get it warmer here and cooler just here. That's an eastern base El Nino, what we call an eastern base El Nino. And that's the kind of pattern that we've got going on at the moment. So what Stuart's done is gone back and looked at years, all the years that had developing El Nino through the summer, and he's specifically been looking at May sea surface temperature anomalies through the Pacific Ocean through those years that had developing El Ninos, and he's come up with 2 years that really closely match this year, what's happened in May this year. And those 2 years are 1972, which is this chart that you're looking at just here, and also 1997. Now, I think 1997 is a closer match than 1972. And the reason I say it is not particularly what's happening actually along the equatorial Pacific, it's what's happening further north through the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Because you see, but in 1972, it's quite cold here around Alaska and going off the Pacific coast of Canada and down this coast of America. Really quite cold waters stretching out into the northern Pacific Ocean. That's a cold PDO that we've got going on there in May 1972, whereas in May 1997 we have a much warmer PDO ceiling. You can see these green and yellow colours here up the west coast of America and going up towards Canada and Alaska. So this is a warmer signal from the northern Pacific, and this is closer to what we've got going on now compared to what was happening in 1972. So I think altitude, they are quite close. There are similarities, good similarities between the 2 years, but I think overall 1997 probably closer to the situation that's going on at the moment. Now remember, 1997 is the year of a Super Nino. I'll be talking a lot more about that in the El Nino update that you're going to be seeing later on at Gav's Weather Vids. But let's have a look at the analogues for the 2 years. So we start off with June 1972. This is what we see in terms of the 500 millibar height anomaly for June 1972. A horrible month. It was just about the coldest June on record and very wet as well. With low pressure riding across the country. The ridge, you notice, is off the coast of Newfoundland, and the jet stream is going like that. So we're on the cold side of the jet, got that trough of low pressure in June 1972. It was a horrible month, very wet and really, really cold as well. Now, June 1997 isn't as bad. It is a very wet month, actually, June 1997, particularly the final 2 weeks, but very unsettled. We've got low pressure as a 500 millibar trough sitting down to the southwest of the country. We've got northern blocking as well, around Greenland and also towards Scandinavia. So the flow actually through this month is quite sort of easterly, northeasterly. And as I say, it did turn very wet in the final 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks were actually reasonably warm, from what I can remember, of June 1997, and not that wet, but the second 2 weeks of the month were very, very wet, particularly on the eastern side of the country. So overall, you see that the 2 years, 1972 and 1997, do favour really quite poor Junes indeed. Whether it turns out cold, it's not that clear, because there's a split between sort of a cold year in 72 and not that cold in 1997. But both years have a lot of rain through the course of June, so maybe we can expect quite a poor June this year. Now, as we go through to July 1972, sees a really significant change to the 500 millibar flow, with areas of high pressure or above average heights ridging in from the Atlantic and also setting them up over Scandinavia as well. The jet stream is sort of splitting, with some of the energy going to the north, some of it tending to go off to the south. It was a pretty cool month again in July 1972, but the compensatory factors was that it was quite a bit drier. It wasn't anywhere near as wet as June. As we go through to July, we see similarities again. We're building the heights in, albeit they're becoming centred. This is July 1997, I should say. They're becoming centred up towards Scandinavia, so strong above average heights setting up over Scandinavia through July 1997. But we also have some ridging out to the west of the country, and again the flow probably quite easterly with this. Now, from what I can remember of July 1997, it starts off really quite cool and unsettled, very poor start to the month, and then it turns warmer and drier as the month progresses. Actually, the temperature overall probably doesn't come out that far from the average, but we've sort of got a cool first half being offset by a much warmer second half. And as we go through to the analogues for August, this is what we see for August 1972, with the ridging building in across the country. So it does settle down quite a lot. But it's a cool month. It's not a warm month. 1972 is a very cool summer overall, but it does significantly improve from where it is in June. It does turn a lot drier. There's plenty of useful weather going on, albeit temperatures are really very disappointing. Now, for August 1997, this is a very interesting month. It's a really hot month, and the reason is that we get this big area of above average height setting up over Scandinavia, the low pressure of course being blocked in the Atlantic, and the flow goes easterly, southeasterly, drags up lots of hot air from the continent. It's a really hot month, August 1997. It's reasonably wet because there's quite a lot of thunderstorms. It's a very interesting month, very unusual month. There's lots of thunderstorms, almost like living in a tropical climate, from what I remember of it. Lots of thunderstorms being triggered by the heat, but it's also a hot month. So hot and thundery is what we had in August 1997. So there's quite a split between these 2 years, 1972 and 1997. They both agree, I think, on the broad pattern, which is that both of them have a very disturbed June, whether it's cold or whether it's near normal in terms of the temperature. They're both pretty dodgy for June. But then we get improvements through July and August on both of the years. It's just that in 1972, despite the high pressure building in, it remained generally very cool with depressed temperatures, whereas in 1997 it gets hotter and hotter and hotter until we get to August, which is a very, very hot month indeed. In fact, I can show you the centering temperature for August 1997. This is 1972, first of all, and you can see how cool it was. So we have June 1972 coming out at just 11.8, dreadful centering temperature, and July and August just in the 15s, 15.6, 15.1, both cooler than average. September very cool again at 11.7. We've not had a September or a June as cold as that for probably since that year, actually, since 1972. But 1997 is very interesting, and this is centering temperature for 1997. 1997. So June, you see 14.1. It's okay in terms of temperature. It's just a wet month, but temperature not that far from normal. Nowhere near as cold as 1972. July comes out at 16.7, so a little bit above average. And of course, what this is telling us is that the first half is quite cool and unsettled, second half much warmer. But look how hot August 1997 is. 18.9, very, very hot month. And that's coming off the hot August that we had in 95, of course, 19.2. And but go back further than that into 1990 as well. So we have the discrepancy between 72 and 97 in terms of essentially temperature. One favours a cool summer, one favours, well, it ended up a very hot summer, but of course it wasn't a hot summer in its totality. But it does end up on a very hot note. But they both agree these years on the broad pattern, which is that we start off really quite unsettled and cool, possibly for June. And then we turn it significantly warmer in the second half of the summer, or turn it significantly drier and anticyclonic in the second half of summer. Whether we turn it significantly warmer is the question, because 72, no, it didn't happen. 97, yes, it did happen. And it just really is the position of the high pressure that determines this. If it stays out to the west or the northwest of the country, of course it means that the flow comes down from the north, and we don't get the heat. If we set the high pressure up to the east of the country, as we did in 97, then we can drag that heat in off the continent. But they're both in agreement in the idea that we start off unsettled and then we improve it through the summer, and August holds the best prospect, no more than that, holds the best prospect for getting some hot conditions, possibly. So that's what the analogues are showing. We'll be having a look at the long-range seasonal models next week, and I'll be putting this analogue forecast together with those long-range seasonal models and attempt to come up with a forecast for the summer of 2015 next week at gazwebiz.com. So do please come back for that next week. But in the meantime, we've got the El Nino update coming up later, so keep checking back for that. There's been some very interesting, very significant developments in the Pacific Ocean over the past month, and I can tell you that the long-range models really are quite shocking in what they're showing for this El Nino going forward. So do come back for that very important update coming up later on. And then there's the poll this evening on the blog when I'll be asking what you think could happen this summer. So lots going on today at GazWebiz. Keep checking back for all the updates. But that's all for now for this first video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.